Hey guys, we're going to do something again this week that we done last week. Last week we posted a short video where we went through our YouTube comments and we chose a couple comments to come on here and answer them on video. That's what we're going to do again this week. And we're going to pick about 3 comments off of the YouTube channel. Now I want to say a big thank you to all you guys who watch, subscribe, like the videos. Thank you so much. Thank you for those of you who have sent us various comments. Even some of you have sent us very critical comments. We're going to get to you in a video too, but as for right now, we're going to take a couple of comments and answer them. Now, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to pause every now and then. I'm going to take a swallow out of this. Y'all forgive me for drinking on video. I am drinking water, and I'm in southern Georgia, man. The pollen here this time of year is so bad that if you're not drinking, you're coughing. So y'all bear with me. Let's go ahead and get into this, all right? Our first question is going to come from YouTube channel Doors to Hide Behind 156. Doors to Hide Behind 156. That's all right. That's a cool screen name there. They write, I have a Florida King, and that's how I found your channel. I really like seeing the different kings that you produce and watching your content. My unsexed snake's about 3 years old and still on the smaller size. I recently moved up to an adult mouse, but he is the thickness of a fuzzy mouse or the width of a finger. A little over 2 foot long. And I've always had him on Aspen and never had any shedding issues with him, but I am now thinking if I should add a humidity hide in his tank. Do you recommend humidity hides for all Florida Kings? Again, great channel. Thanks for sharing. Well, Doors to Hide Behind, I do recommend humidity hides. And not only with Florida Kings, but if you have any species that enjoys high humidity, like a Florida King, a ball python, a red-tailed boa, a Burmese python, a blood python, and the list goes on. If you have one of those animals that like high humidity, then certainly use a humidity hut. What it will do, and what I like about a humidity hut, is it creates a microclimate. Say, for example, the humidity inside the enclosure itself, say, was 40%, 45%. All right. In a humidity hut situation, you're going to have a microclimate in that terrarium somewhere where that animal can choose to go and use that additional humidity. Could be around shedding times when snakes are ready to shed their skin. A lot of times they'll seek out areas that the humidity level is a little higher. They'll soak in water bowls and so forth. Now, we do actually carry a humidity hide on our channel or on our website at coldbloodcreations.online. However, we only sell the small ones. But if you need a humidity hide and all you can find is a larger hide, one thing that you can do is to simply buy a hide that's a little bit bigger than what you need and place a water bowl inside the hide. That way, as that water evaporates, it'll create that same microclimate it would if you were using one of the humidity hides with the sponges. So just a little tip and trick. We do recommend the use of those. I think you're going to find that if you use one, you're going to have cleaner sheds. And snakes are happier. They like to hide. They like somewhere they can stay out of sight. You're using aspen bedding, so your snake probably stays buried a lot of the time in the aspen. But we certainly do recommend the use of a humidity hide. And Doors to Hide Behind 156, thank you for your comment. We thank you for tuning in. Our next comment comes from Jay, just the letter J, nothing else. So the letter J writes, this video is confusing for me. Everything negative that I've heard about mealworms as a staple is not for the reasons you mentioned, but for 3 other reasons. They're too high in fat content, they're tough exoskeleton that can be hard on digestion, and an up to 1.5 calcium to phosphorus ratio. What do you think about these reasons? Well, I think some of those reasons may be partially valid, and some of them are just outright not valid at all. Now, when it comes to using mealworms, first of all, we don't recommend mealworms be used as a lone food source. We recommend that the diet of a bearded dragon be as varied as it possibly can be. Now, in the video you're talking about, we did say that there were people out there that have raised bearded dragons on mealworms exclusively. And there have been people who have done that. However, that's not what we recommend. We recommend that you use as many different insect feeders as you can so that you give your dragons a balanced and a varied diet. For example, we use crickets, mealworms, superworms, soldier fly larvae, dubia roaches. All of these things we incorporate into our dragon's diet. Now, when you are incorporating a variety of insects, you don't really have to worry about the calcium to phosphorus ratio of a single insect because you're feeding this varied diet and the nutritional value of those insects are also going to vary. If you're worried about that, gut load your insects. The simple way to get additional nutrition into your feeder insects is to gut load them. Now, we recommend and sell a brand called Insect Buffet. What you do is just feed this to your insects, no matter what the insects are, whether they're roaches or mealworms. Feed it to them prior to feeding those insects to your dragon, and all of the nutrition, the protein, the vitamin, the minerals, the calcium, the phosphorus, all those things, the vitamin D3 that are in the Insect Buffet will be passed into your bearded dragon through the guts of those feeder insects, thus the term gut loading of your feeder insects. So that's what we recommend. Varied diet, gut load them up, and then you don't have to worry about these things. Now, as far as the tough exoskeleton, let me talk about that for a minute. And what I have found is that bearded dragons have zero problems, no problems whatsoever when it comes to digesting mealworms. And I'm not saying that out of no experience. We have fed mealworms to bearded dragons for probably over 20 years, about 24 years now. I've never had an issue with it. However, every time I've seen or heard from someone that's feeding mealworms and they say my dragon can't digest them, I always ask a series of questions. Number one, how many mealworms are you feeding at a time? Most people simply don't know. They just dump out a couple of mealworms and they let the dragon eat as much as they want. As a result of that, the dragons will oftentimes eat more than they should. They will gorge themselves. Their little tiny stomach is then really, really full, and they go to digest and realize they've been gluttonous, they've eaten too much, and now they do what we call the supermodel syndrome. They give it all back up. The way to avoid that is simply don't overfeed mealworms. Mealworms are one of the easiest prey items for your bearded dragons to catch. Unlike crickets who are bouncing around everywhere and roaches who are pretty fast, mealworms are very, very slow moving, and therefore they're easy pickings for your bearded dragons. Thus, it makes them easy to overeat on mealworms. Feed appropriate amounts of mealworms at a time. Now, speaking of appropriate amounts, sizing plays a great deal of importance in whether or not your bearded dragon is going to be able to digest them. Now, we've heard all kind of rules that we have been breaking probably since the rules were invented, but people will say, oh, you can't feed a bearded dragon a mealworm until they're like a year old. We've heard all kind of things, 2 years old, 6 months old. We feed them mealworms about 2 days after they come out of the egg. That being said, though, you can't feed this little tiny baby dragon a full-grown mealworm. Once again, they will try to eat it, and many times they will eat it. They'll get all of that huge content down into their stomach, and then they'll throw it back up, and people see that, and they say, well, see, they can't digest it. Well, it's like this. I like steak. All right, I love a sirloin, a ribeye steak. But if you shoved a quarter of a cow down my throat, I guarantee you I'm not going to be able to digest it. Same thing with these animals. They can eat mealworms, but if you're shoving a large adult mealworm down the throat of a little baby dragon, you are going to get some regurgitation. You're going to think, well, they can't digest it. And the problem is you have just basically shoved a cow down his throat. So watch for the size. Size proportionate. The space between a bearded dragon's eyes. If that worm is any bigger than that space, you're feeding too large. Go ahead and switch it up. Get you some smaller mealworms or switch to another feeder insect. Last but not least, Kyle Loader. Kyle, I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing your last name right, but Kyle writes, I'm having trouble with my new baby milk snake from Pet Supplies. I really wish I would have got from a breeder. He was new at the store the day I got him, so no records of the last time he ate. It's been 2 weeks, hasn't ate. I've tried twice. Braining and leaving an enclosure. I've tried taking it out and putting I guess he means put it back in. Separate enclosure as well with just a hide and snake and Pinky. Frozen thawed from freezer to fridge to hot water with Pinky in bang. I guess he means bag. Kyle, I'm glad you left this comment. This is a great comment. Unfortunately, this is one of the downfalls when it comes to buying from a big box store, especially live animals. That's one of the things we always tell people. You know what? If you want to buy your supplies from these places, certainly do. We don't recommend the purchase of live animals from Petco's, PetSmarts, or whatsoever. The reason for that is this, and it's not. We're not beating up on PetSmart. It's not necessarily their fault, but the issue is this. An employee of a PetSmart store, maybe once a week, once a month, I don't know how often it comes in, they get a box, it comes in, they open it up, there's a bunch of snakes on there, they put them in the cages, put them on display, and they sell them. They know absolutely nothing about the history of those animals. They can't tell you anything about the genetics. Many times they can't tell you what the animal fed, what it fed on, when it last fed, and anything else. So therefore, when they sell you the animal, you go home and you have a problem here like Kyle's having, you really have nobody to reach out to but reach out to somebody online that's not affiliated with you at all. Now, the reason I say that's because if he calls PetSmart and says, hey, let me get that employee that sold me that snake, again, he's not going to be able to be any help to him. He's not going to be able to tell him when it last fed, whether it's feeding on live versus frozen thawed and all of that. That is where buying from a breeder is always going to be in your best interest. You call the breeder up and he can tell you, yes, that animal fed last Wednesday, a week from this Wednesday. It fed on frozen thawed. The size were pinky mice or peach fuzzy mice, whatever that case may be. That breeder is going to know that. And if he's a good, reliable, and a good ethical breeder, he's going to keep feeding records on his animals. That way, if someone like Kyle here calls and says, hey, I'm having problems feeding, he can say, hey, here's what's going on. Now, that being said, I'm just going to share this. I'm going to throw this out here because it's a shameless plug, and I'm just going to say it. We don't sell any animals. We don't put them up for sale until they have consistently eaten frozen thawed consistently for 4 or 5 times. We don't want to sell an animal to the public that has feeding issues, to be quite honest with you. We use a coloring system. Red means that we offered food to the animal, frozen thawed, and I'm talking about baby snakes here when they're born. We offer them food. If they refuse it, they get a red dot. If we offer food again in a few days, they refuse it, they get a red dot. If they get 3 red dots, we're not going to let them starve to death. We will go ahead and feed them a live pinky mouse. Once those animals begin to eat, if they're hard feeders, if they go ahead and eat right off the bat, they get a green dot. If we feed them again, frozen thawed, they eat, they get another green dot. Once that animal has 5 or 6 green dots on the cage, we say, okay, this guy has consistently fed on frozen thawed, therefore we can put him up for sale. We do that because we don't want to create feeding problems for our customer. Once we get a snake feeding on live, then of course we continue with them. We try to get them over to frozen thawed because that's what most people want. Most people want a snake that's readily feeding on frozen thawed rodents because of the convenience of supplying mice for it. And that's what we try to do. So Kyle, I'm going to tell you, unfortunately, that's kind of the situation you get in when you buy from a big pet store. But I'm going to offer you some help, and that's the same, or just the same. What I'm going to recommend you to do, if you just bought the snake, give him a little time to adjust. Give him, it may take a week or so, put him in the cage, leave him alone, let him find his water, his heat, his hide, let him familiarize himself with his environment. And then after about a week, offer him food again, leave it in the terrarium somewhere where he can find it, and then leave him alone, let him eat in private. That may be the case. A lot of snakes don't like to feed if someone is standing over them, watching them, but certainly I'd give them a little while to adjust, settle in. Hope things go well for you. Hope the snake starts off feeding. That being said, appreciate all you guys who wrote in, who left comments and things like that for the channel. Thank you so much. Thank you guys that subscribe to the channel. We do appreciate it. And if you guys like this type of video where we just come on here for kicks and giggles, man, we read some comments, we talk back to you. It gives us kind of an interchange. Anyway, if you like these kind of videos, let me know down below. If you guys, if you don't want to watch them, we don't want to make them. So anyway, thank you guys for watching. Y'all have a great weekend.